Are there people there?
There are people here, yes.
We didn't actually announce it or anything.
No, we didn't.
But it's Saturday night. What else would anybody be doing?
No.
Besides drawing, you know, and watching TV and watching.
What is that, Carl?
Who?
Is that your Carl?
This is a Carl Angel 5.
Carl Angel 5.
Yeah. It's a actually really good pencil sharpener that you still have to take the lead stop out. I had to file this one down because it's all metal.
Oh.
Yeah, but it works. Really.
Hello, if you guys have any questions or anything. Let's see what he's working on over here. Actually, you just finished like 2 pieces.
Yeah, and this is one here that I just finished recently.
That's one you just finished. Oh, there's your...
So that makes a long tapered point, and then I just sharpen it more like with this.
So it...
And I like it on a curve because then just a little bit of the lead comes into contact with the paper and it doesn't break as much. So.
Gotcha.
Not that I have to use that sharp of a pencil all the time.
Do you guys have any questions?
So...
People are saying that you inspire them and your work is awesome.
Oh, thank you very much.
You're a channel to a deeper place.
Well, I appreciate those words. I do.
You're asking where you get your inspiration.
I think a lot of what I do is kind of a reaction to the stuff that I've seen a lot. Like mine, you could say your inspiration comes from the stuff you're around your entire life, because a lot of things play into it, like in terms of like seeing things in decay and studying textures in nature and things. Mm-hmm. And then I guess topically, a lot of that comes from I guess a reaction to contemporary like what's going on in the world in a lot of ways. Right. So I have kind of a or I would say kind of in some of the pieces that I do, I use it as a sort of a spiritual connection to, I guess you could say, the creative aspect of the world I live in.
Uh-huh.
So.
Apparently Instagram opened up colored hearts, because now you're getting a bunch of colored
that's awesome.
hearts.
Oh, there's a rainbow. That's
There's
cool.
rainbows of hearts.
Yeah, that's awesome.
This is when you started. Did you start this on another live feed?
That was I don't know if it was a live feed or not, but I was playing with this idea of like a kind of the iron cross kind of theme that it shows up in a lot of places. I think Beksinski did these T-bar kind of crosses. They're not crucifixes, and it's just an interesting shape, right? That I like to play with, and I've seen it show up in other places as well. That it's sort of like an archetypical design shape. I was talking to some guys at Luxcon about it, and there's like that. There's the I call it the Iron Cross, and then there's the eye. It's like an eye beam that shows up visually in a lot of things.
Right.
Not in my work, but in other people's work too.
People say they like your stuff.
Oh, thank you.
Alex says he doesn't follow any artists. Maybe he could write music for your art. You can always message us.
I would love to hear your music. I'm always looking for good music for the work to because I do actually want to produce a video at some point of an entire process from beginning to end of a larger, more complicated piece. Mm-hmm. And it would be great to have some good music for that. So.
Right.
But
there's smiley faces coming.
Oh, that's awesome. So.
Stara says, your shading is extremely smooth and subtle. What marks are you using to produce tone? Is it usually thin lines, small swirling motions, etc.?
I'll do, sometimes if it's in the darker range, I'll do kind of what I'm doing here to establish where the values are going to be. So I'll do this, you can see where the texture is. And then if I want to make it darker, I'll go back in and start hitting the little between spots to even it out. And build it up slowly and gradually. If you build it up slowly and gradually, it seems to maintain the velvet quality of the paper rather than burnishing out all of the texture.
Right, flattening that paper out
Yeah,
and everything.
if you go hard, which you can do that too, but you have to understand that's the texture you're going to go for. If I were to burnish it really hard, it would end up being hard, polished strokes. And so where I want that, that's fine. But if I want to keep the velvet quality, then I'll do it like that, and then even it out sometimes with a little bit of a pointillism. I'm not sure if you can technically call it pointillism if it's not paint, but because I think mostly in black and white it's called stippling, and that seems less professional sounding than pointillism. but that's what I'm doing. It's like if I want to even this out here, then I just look at the rough areas and touch it with the tip of the sharp point that we made, and it starts to smooth out the texture. If that's what I want, if I want to leave it, then I just let it stand.
I like this, all this here. The idea that it's coming up. They're asking what kind of music you listen to, classical or...
Lately, I've been listening to the Annihilation soundtrack. I like stuff that sounds rather abstract, or at least I'm in the mood for that. I've been specifically the Alien track from Annihilation. I've been listening to that a lot, and it sort of just sounds like a noise that I say a noise, but a sound that I hear in my head when I'm working. That's kind of, I don't know, primal.
Yeah, we finally saw Annihilation.
Yeah, which I liked a lot, actually.
I know. So did I.
But I listen to everything. I listen to I like Celtic, Viking type music. I listen to.
You listen to classical.
Classical. I listen to some rock. I like a lot of like electronic. I like stuff that sounds like Transformers transforming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you listen to Lustmord?
I have listened to some. And I appreciate and like a lot of the intense, darker music. I have definitely. It's all about mood and where I'm at. I usually, when I'm conceiving of something, to start, I rarely listen to anything at the beginning.
Yeah, that's true.
With the exception of when I'm doing concept work for somebody else, in which case I'll listen to something super energetic and it speeds me up.
Someone asked if, yes, I do sell originals online because they're in Belgium. At our website, the originals are not yet up.
Yeah, it's not really the
not
website.
current right now.
The shopping cart on the website has been down for a bit, and we're in the middle of deciding what to do about it. In fact, one of my last big originals went to Belgium.
That's true. That is true. Yeah, so we ship overseas and everything, and
just email us if you see something or run across anything on my page, and you
the feed or anything
the
like
feed,
that. Yeah,
and you can email us at
Victoria LTW
at gmail.com.
or you can throw me a message on Instagram, but I usually don't chat on Instagram through the messages because it's a little difficult to.
Yeah, Instagram doesn't give us timely notifications. I don't know why. Or at least mine doesn't. I have it set up to notify me, but it doesn't really give me... I find that people have messaged me on there, and it doesn't send me the notification that I've got a message.
Right. Were you formally trained or solely self-practiced?
A little bit of both. A little bit of formally and a lot of self. Right. I would say that. I did a couple years of college in which I learned things like screen printing and lithography.
Jewelry making, and just craftsmanship in general.
And then most of what I do now is a product of looking at the things that I like and finding people who did it and contacting them, or just studying it on my own. Anytime I say self-taught, that means self-directed. I will find people to ask questions, which technically would make them, a teacher too. But I think if you really learn something, you end up being self-directed in your learning environment, no matter what. Mm-hmm. And when I went to school, they didn't really know it, because I guess I started in like 1984, 85 in college, and they didn't really know what to do with me back then. They didn't really have where I was. They didn't have any knowledge of like concept art or the kind of work that I wanted to do. Yeah, so they basically directed me at a liberal arts school, which there are some great liberal arts schools that have great art programs. But mostly what I wanted to do, they didn't really know what to do with. So.
Right. Someone wanted a studio shot.
No, it's It's cleaner than normal, but it's still kind of messy.
It is a little messy. That's all right. Have you ever contacted Wayne Barlow? You work with Wayne.
I have worked with Wayne Barlow, and he's a great guy. Mm-hmm. Yeah. In fact, he's one of the people that when I say self-directed, I found his video. They have Gnomon has a
Gnomon Workshop.
Gnomon Workshop online has a thing where you can watch him do a rendering of a concept piece. And before I met him, I had bought that online, and then I met him when we started working on Mountains of Madness back in 2010. And it was one of those things where you walk in, it's your first concept job ever, and you're like sitting next to the person that you most like idolize and are most intimidated by. So it was a mixed blessing, but he's a great guy.
You know that in some yes.
And there
right.
was also on that job was Peter Koenig, Guy Davis, Keith Thompson.
No, you met a whole bunch
and
of people.
San Francisco. Francisco
No,
Ruiz.
that's not an original Beksinski. That's a print.
Oh, on the wall?
No. That's not an original.
I have a signed print, though, of the flute. I call it the flute player, but that's as close to an original as I can come to right now.
Right.
Although I have seen Guillermo's originals in Bleak House, and there's some beautiful pieces.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look, Barlow's engaged in developing his own world with the sort of the continuation of his Inferno.
Yeah, he's on Instagram too.
Yeah, he actually I think just released a figure like a year or two ago that I think he and Simon had developed it together, like a collectible figure from his world. And he is on Instagram too. He posts work every so often. But
Someone asked if you were inspired by Giger, and then someone asked about Beksinski. Yes.
Both of those, yes, in equal measure, and it's strange because I find them actually to be very similar, but coming from opposite ends of the spectrum. Whereas Giger, I looked at and saw his work as organic things transforming into technology, whereas that was technologically based. Beksinski's is more organic, and it's almost like just an overwhelming organic quality infusing these things in it. They just turned even like magnified the organic what do you call it, aesthetic.
Right. Hello,
So-
Mexico.
Oh, cool.
What is working with Guillermo like? Someone asked.
Oh, he's a great human being to be in the same room with. He's a very much knows what he wants, and there are times when he'll let you explore your own ideas, and if he likes your idea, he'll go with it. But he definitely has a language that artists can understand, because he's an artist in his own respect, obviously from what he does, but he knows how to get to what he wants you to do, rather than you might work with some art directors that will give you very general and vague direction that's sometimes hard to move action on.
Right.
But he's not like that. And when he loves something, he makes it obvious that he loves it. He doesn't withhold. In fact, if you like something enough, he'll slap you across the back hard enough to knock you out of your chair practically. But he's great. He's just as personable and as much fun as you would think he would be from seeing him on TV. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so if we miss any questions or anything, just can always email. What is the paper you're using there?
This paper is just Strathmore medium surface drawing paper 400 series, which I kind of I go to a lot because it's easy to come by and it's not that expensive, but it's still a good drawing paper that's archivally sound. I like to work on Stonehenge as well, and Stillman and Byrne Zeta series paper. Mm-hmm. And also some the Fabriano papers are good too.
Arches watercolor.
Arches hot press watercolor mostly, but.
See, it's amazing that those ones you're working on are going to look like that up at the top.
That's a question of going back and doing what I said earlier. It's you basically go in and make everything look intentional. So.
Are you creating texture with the side of the pencil?
I am. When I do that, it's to bring out the tooth. And then where I like it, I'll let it stand. Like you can see, well, it's mostly smooth, but there are definitely places where I'll actually see, it'll actually imply patterns and striations and things that I wouldn't normally have just thought of on my own. I let the medium help dictate what the image is going to look like,
Right.
as opposed to being super controlled like that.
Right.
So that's graphite on ampersand clay that I worked back into with these. These are actually vintage Faber-Castell erasers, but you can also get the ones that you can buy now that are pretty easy to come by online. These are the Perfection 7058Bs.
Yeah. Faber-Castell.
But they're yeah, and then I sharpen them just on, on this. You can sharpen them with a pencil sharpener to get them pretty sharp, but the tip usually ends up being fat, and then you have to sharpen them on sandpaper to get a good point. Mm-hmm. That you can do some fine detail with. But yeah, whenever I work realistically like this, there's always that 90% of the piece is frustrating until you hit enough details aggregate to form an illusion of realism. Well, it's an illusion of realism. It's like once you have enough cues in the right spot and the values are close to where they need to be, that's when it starts to come into focus. But up until then, it just looks like a poorly done piece of realism, right? Until you get to that point.
Okay.
Because realism is an aggregation of details, right? And it goes through stages where some of the values, if they're just a little out of place, will throw the whole thing off because you're basing it on a very high bar of what you know to be real.
Right.
If I were to stylize that, it would be easier to do because then I would lower the bar on realism and I could play with the details and manipulate them in different directions, which is what I do in these things. These are not based on reality.
What kind of grit is what? This is really fine. That's like
this is it's 400 wet dry sandpaper.
Yeah. Hello Poland and hello Seattle.
Mm-hmm. And then there's rough sandpaper here too.
Oh yeah, you use it on this too. So.
Yeah. So.
He said the hand is incredible.
Oh, thank you. So, it's part of I have a show coming up in August. And
at Copro
in
Santa Monica.
And I have a series of, within the show, there are larger pieces, but I have a series of smaller pieces that deal a lot with hand gesture and expression.
Someone from New Zealand also.
Oh, that's awesome. So.
Barlow's infernal work as well as expedition and his guide to extraterrestrials. Do you yourself have any tip to creating truly bizarre, pardon me, and alien beings?
Well, I would say that the thing that helps me the most is when I allow myself to start off with really abstract sketches. That I don't necessarily. I'm not
sketch beforehand.
Yeah,
you just kind of go with it.
I don't know if I have something like this. I've been using this kind of floral, kind of nouveau kind of pattern in a lot of things lately, because it suits the theme that I'm working on. But what I'll do, and I did like I had no idea when I started this, because I started with these shapes up here, that it was actually going to turn into these weird horns on this kind of irritated demon guy. Is what he looks very kind
irritated demon guy.
He sort of looks kind of irritated, but so I would say practice seeing things in abstraction and then letting yourself play with shapes, and then once you do that, impose on that abstraction a comparative anatomy that looks realistic. So if I were to start off with, say, there's some tentacles that I was playing with. So,
because someone's asking if you sketch a lot beforehand.
It depends on the piece, really. This was something I did before I went to bed the other day, but it sort of popped into my head. I've been kind of playing with this sort of fat greyhound shape,
right.
with thin legs, but I've been doing that. It's sort of got this imagery that I need to play with. But I do sketch. But a lot of times I'll just sit here and play with sort of abstract shapes, and then kind of I'll eventually find an element, like a small part. This is sort of the reverse of how a lot of people design, where they start off with silhouettes. I guess I am kind of starting off with a silhouette, but to me this isn't any. I'm not directing it to make anything in particular. So so I would play with this, and then I'd start to see elements within it that I might like hook on, and that might like grab my eye, and then I would run with that element. And if anything at this point doesn't support the element, then I'll just erase the other parts of it until
Right.
until it gets to a point where it starts to work. But
Do you struggle at first to exist in the repeat of practice, maybe by TV or something else that led to procrastination?
Well, you know what? When I came to a point where I started having I didn't have a work ethic when I first started. I would just like kind of work whenever I felt like it, and
We always
I would,
thought that we worked really
I thought I
hard.
worked hard, and I would do like maybe a piece or two every month, and that's not. I was in a area like I was doing print market stuff, so that was like forgiving, and that I could get away with it. But then I had a kid that started to command a lot of time, and I realized that if I didn't actually have a work ethic and sit myself down to work, I'd never get anything done.
Right.
And so actually, I give credit to having a child as being the reason why I got the work ethic that I have. I don't necessarily think that you have to have a kid to do it, but you just have to have that realization that if you build a habit of working, then that's what you're going to end up wanting. You're going to end up doing.
That was just the factor that
right.
tipped it over for you. You were like, oh my gosh, if I want to hang out with him for
Right.
a couple hours a day, then when I sit down to work, I got to actually
Then
get to work.
but otherwise I'd never be able to make a living doing anything.
No.
But the thing is that it's you got to give yourself permission to become obsessed with your own work, I guess you could say.
Right.
Once I stopped feeling like because I felt like there were a lot of people that were saying, oh well, I have a real life. When I said I would sit and draw a lot, and I was like, okay, I guess I should have a real life too. And I was like, realized that I was talking to Vicky about this the other day, is that most of what everybody likes to do for fun bores me to tears, and I don't want to, I don't want to do most of the stuff that people talk about that they're doing when they have a real life. I'd pretty much rather sit around and be boring and do my own work, than go out to a party or do things like that. So it just depends on where you're at and what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with parties. There's nothing wrong with
Right.
having fun.
Just a different person.
It just depends on where you're at and
Someone asked, is it okay never to finish a piece or a sketch or take a really long time at it?
it's okay to take a long time. I think,
have lots of
and
sketches
I have
that
a
are-
lot of unfinished sketches. So yeah, I mean, it's perfectly okay if you have the mechanism to get to a point where you start to finish things. You don't. I guess you don't want to leave everything unfinished. I mean, but yet, I mean, taking your time to do something, there's nothing wrong with that. And I mean, there's a lot to be made of today. The people talking about drawing and sketching fast, which I do when I do concept work. But this okay, so right now this actually looks like it's more interesting this way to me because it sort of looks like a big-headed alien kind of
Yeah,
thing.
it does kind of.
Yeah. And I guess in my head, I do this a lot. I spin things,
Turn
and
them and move them.
as I see it like this, though, I turned it this way, and I start thinking about the actual elephant head alien from the movie Aliens. The elephant head.
Right. The big,
back-
the big dead thing they found.
Right. Back when I thought that's what it looked like, rather than it being the big white-faced humanoid creature that it turned out to be. Which, that's their prerogative. It's their movie. But I liked it better when it was going to be an alien that had this sort of like weird bony proboscis that came down.
Thingy.
But anyway, what were we talking about before?
Mike says, thinks from Paris, kids actually eat time like sweets.
Oh, yeah.
They do.
This is true. And
It
so
is
that's
true.
one of the reasons why I actually work at night, too. It worked out really well when we had kids at first, too, because I would be up at night with the
Yeah.
kids. And now I'm
Could
up
feed the
at...
kids at night. I
Right.
could sleep all night. It was wonderful.
Now I work at night, but in that part of the day when the kids are like usually most active after school, that I'm always awake for that, and I'm usually awake when they go to school.
Right.
So I sleep when they're at school, and that means Vicky also has time away from me because I'm like out of her hair at the time that I'm sleeping. So we have, even though we both work within like 50 feet of each other,
Right. We have time
we
by
have
ourselves.
time by ourselves.
Exactly.
So that works out well.
Someone asked about the show in August is going to be at the Copro.
Yes, Copro Nason. I guess it's
in
just Copro now.
Santa Monica.
In Santa Monica.
And the opening is August 11th. And you're also doing a group show.
There are 2 shows. My show is called Covenant, and the group show is called Personal Gods. And I've invited, there are a lot of artists that are...
And I will have a list next week of all the artists.
Yeah, so...
Have you ever known of who Bronislaw Beksinski inspired his paintings? No, but now now you have to message me that name.
I'll have to look it up. I have seen a lot of people who have who seem to have that Beksinski in their lineage of inspiration. You know, like I don't know if you guys are familiar with Peter Grick, but he's the one guy who does a lot of. He seems like his work doesn't look as whereas Beksinski's work had a quality of loneliness to it. I don't think that is what comes across in like Grick's landscapes.
Right. In Peter's,
there's a more positive quality to it.
Right.
And you know, there's another guy who does some beautiful work that's I believe was in part inspired by some of Beksinski's stuff. His name is Darius.
Oh yeah.
You know, Chris has a lot of his paintings,
Yes.
or some of his paintings, but I forget his last name.
Doesn't he have a piece up at Copro right now for the roadside attraction?
I think
show?
he does. Yeah, he has a piece that, if you look on the online exhibit of the roadside attraction show, his first name's Darius, but he does some beautiful work as well.
I have another question. Who are some lesser known old masters you might be able to recommend for study?
Like, there's one guy that I always talk about that a lot of people don't know about, but he's the guy that sort of inspired Giger, and I think actually in part Beksinski as well. And he's a German artist named Hans Bellmer, or Belmer, Belmer. And he did a lot of line drawings and things that are kind of darkly, I guess you could call it darkly erotic, some of his stuff, and disturbing in some ways. And you can definitely see imagery that evolved into some of the imagery that Giger used.
What pencil is it? Tombow Mono 100?
Yeah, Tombow Mono.
Tombow Mono
6B.
100. 6B.
Yeah. The 100s are the ones with the little plastic ends, and they're a bit smoother than just the monos. It has to have the 100 on the end.
Mind at Large asks, do you think you could do it alone, Alan? You guys are a real power couple.
If I were
Wonder
working by myself, I would probably be doing work and just having it in a closet somewhere stacking up, because I don't know that I would be able to do every. I feel like the answer to that question, the simple answer is no. I don't know that I'd be able to do it if I did it all by myself.
You're too nice.
But I feel like I would probably be doing a lot more of just illustration without being able to do my own work.
Right.
If it were just me by myself, I would probably default, because to be honest, doing your own work, your personal expression is a lot more time consuming than illustrating for someone else. And it's in a lot of ways a lot harder to deal with, because you don't have any guarantees that people are going to like what you do. But the nature of doing your own work is that you kind of are going to do what you're going to do, whether people like it or not. And because believe me, there are definitely things that I've done in the past that I was like, I'm going to do this, and then I finished it, and it was like nobody really cared about it, but it was something that I learned a lot from or liked a lot.
Right.
But yeah, the short answer is Vicky makes it infinitely more easy to do this than it would be without her.
Oh, you're a sweetheart.
Oh.
Thank you.
No, it's true.
They're asking, do you like Caravaggio?
Yeah, you know what? I like them. I like Waterhouse. I like Jerome. I like all those. Jerome for the drafting. And Waterhouse too, and Tadema and
The
Leighton.
Ikes, the Ikes.
Yeah, I actually, in terms of, I also, if you guys have never seen them, there are two illustrators that work in tandem. Andrzej and Olga. Andrzej and Olga Dugin and Dugina. I think it's Andrzej Dugin and Olga Dugina. They do a lot of children's books, and they did concept work on some of the Harry Potter movies. But if you've never heard of them before,
oh my gosh,
go check out their work. It's almost like, and their work is watercolor, I think, and it's not huge. But they spend so much time to make these beautiful pieces. They're like perfectly, rendered. They're different. It's like I like a lot of different artists because I don't necessarily, always want to see somebody who works in the nature of the way that I work. I learn like from a lot of different people. And somebody asked me something about staying contemporary, and I was like, well, I look at everything everybody does. I mean, I look at digital artists too, because
Oh, yeah.
I'll see somebody do something digitally, and I go, I wonder how you would do that traditionally, you know?
Yeah.
Or that's a texture that you could, that you could do digitally, or traditionally, you know?
Right.
And
Necro.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Necro is
in terms of just impactful design and beautiful imagery, is it Necroxy or Necro Eye
Yes.
online does some beautiful work. It's usually like black and red or black.
Nekro though.
Yeah, NEKRO. Some beautiful stuff. I have absolutely nothing against digital. I like to say that because I think there's a lot of animosity between traditional and digital people.
Fight.
I just, they're different mediums, and people, are going to pick the medium that suits them, and there's
Right.
absolutely nothing wrong with it.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
You have another modern Palancar, John Jude
Palancar does
Oh
some
my
beautiful
gosh.
work. His work is hard. It's hard to describe how beautiful his work is in person, even though it looks great on book covers. That is nothing compared to what it looks like in
Oh
person.
no, it's gorgeous.
You know, there are
Absolutely
definitely
gorgeous.
some art that you have to see in person that can't be reproduced.
We have to pause here. Not actually pause, but the dog needs in.
the dog.
Or out. Come on. Come on. Come on. Oh my god. He did his.
He just wanted attention.
Sorry, you guys.
That's our dog, is Izzy, who is actually Israel, named after Israel Kamakawulele, the Hawaiian singer that we love.
Yeah, I think it's Nekro is Necro.
I believe so.
Look
You
up,
could
look
it
him up on your thing.
If you're on Pinterest, Necro will bring it up.
There he is.
So, let's see.
Yeah.
Well, these are actually, I think, his boards, huh? Where's his work, though?
I don't know. Necro XII.
You know what? I'll just hold on. Give me a second.
Necro XII. Someone told me.
Here's one of them.
I knew.
So,
He is gorgeous.
if you can see these, he does some. These are all. I think these are done. If I'm not correct, these are. If I'm mistaken, these are both three-dimensionally. They're designed in a 3D program, and there's paint over and some photography as well.
Wow.
I could be mistaken, but actually, he's one of the people that I invited to the Personal
Group
God
show.
show.
Yeah.
I wanted him to do a very limited digital print of his work and have it at the show because I like his work so much.
Yes.
It tends to be. He tends to work in very almost monochromatic stuff. So.
We're saying you're an inspiration
Oh well, that's very kind.
and a wizard.
Oh. Let's see. Does that show up?
They
Yeah,
admire
there's a-
your work.
Oh, well, thank you. See, he tends to work in monochromatic color schemes, or with palettes, or with just values in a bright spot of color.
Right.
So, but I like his work a lot. Actually.
Yeah.
Sorry. Anyway,
Anyway.
let's see who else is on there. There's a painter named Limes that I like a lot recently.
Blimes.
Blimes, I think.
Someone asked earlier about how you seal off, and someone was asking on
Ooh, no, that's
YouTube
all food.
also.
I don't know what that is. So,
All food.
yeah.
How you seal the ampersand and clapboard. This is not
This is
the
not
matte
sealed.
medium. I know it's not sealed yet.
This is graphite on top, and then at this point, if I were to say I'm finished with it, I would seal it with like a clear acrylic spray coat, like a clear coat or crystal clear.
Yes, because because you did that to the one piece, you put the matte medium and water mixture on it, but it what did it do to the values? It killed the value. You told me the other day, right?
With matte medium, what it does is it like destroys any amount. Like if I were to do it on top of this, the matte medium would kill any of the striations that you would see visually. Mm-hmm. But the weird thing is, if you were to then hit it with a clear coat that was gloss, it would all come back. It
Yes.
disappears, and then it can all come back.
Oh, I'll come back
So,
there.
yeah.
Your Pinterest handle is the same, or is it I_, or is it just I just draw?
My Pinterest, I believe, is
I just draw.
it might be I Just Draw, or it might be just be Alan Williams.
No, it's I just draw.
Okay.
You're asking if you like Peter's work, Peter Moorbacher.
Oh yeah, I know Peter. Actually,
did the workshop last year with
Yeah,
them.
I was one of the instructor and guests at
One
One Fantastic Week
workshop.
last year. One Fantastic Workshop, yeah. But
You are welcome, Erica and Gary.
so if you look, when you talk about inspiration, I collect, like, I love Solomon J. Solomon's work quite a bit. Of this stuff because of the nature of the smooth aligned with the texture around it. So Solomon J. Solomon is one of my favorite guys as well.
So Connor is asking the steps to becoming an illustrator. That is not an easily.
Well, there are, you know, first off, I mean, there's the steps to learning how to do the craft, right? Which is figuring out how to illustrate what you want to illustrate. So that's like so. It depends on what kind of, I mean, you have to figure out what kind of an artist you're going to be, right?
Right.
Whether you're going to be an abstraction or stylization or realism or fantasy or, you know, dark or whatever. So that's part of it.
You're going to illustrate magazines. You're going to illustrate
Right.
children's books. You're going to,
Directly, if you're looking to illustrate something specifically, then you do work that looks in that vein until you get to a point where you feel like what you're doing is comparable to what they're showing or better.
Right.
And then you start submitting work to them. In terms of steps, it's basically it's learning how to be an artist, essentially.
Right.
But you got to just figure out what direction you're going to go in. But, so I have like tons of
he's a great Pinterest board.
I have tons of stuff that I look at as reference, not as reference so much as inspiration.
There's
Forrest is one that I love to look at because her work is also dimensional, and it's textural, and it's that combination of creature and human element that I love so much. But
She's
let's see.
Forrest Rogers.
Forrest Rogers.
No,
She
I'm
has
sorry, Forrest Beings on
on
Instagram. She's Forrest Beings.
Yeah, she also has a Patreon though, where you can kind of follow
that's
her work
right.
and see the process there.
Yes.
So a lot of times it's an image by image thing, and sometimes I'll look at an image and not know who made it, and then one day I'll go, wait a minute, who did that? And then I'll go and look at it and then find
There's
out.
the Beth. There's the
what?
sculptor.
Which one? Oh,
Beth.
Beth Cavender Stitcher.
Oh yeah.
She
Her
just
stuff
does
is
some
like-
does some beautiful work too. That it's usually based around animal forms that are expressive and in some ways usually twisted too.
Yeah.
But anyway, if you go up on like Pinterest, there's a lot of stuff on there probably that you don't care about, you know, food and crafts and things, unless you do, you know.
Working out.
There's a lot of working out.
Working out
but
things I
but,
should
but
have.
there is a ton of people that are professional artists that,
Yes.
that curate style boards on there.
I know Lauren has a style board
Yeah,
too. Lauren
and-
Panapinto.
And you can create secret boards, and I know people use this in terms of movie direction too,
Yeah.
because they'll create style boards for certain characters and keep them, you know,
Someone-
secret and stuff like that.
Someone asked, "What is your least favorite style or period of art?" I have that funny story.
Oh,
But you have to keep drawing.
I can tell you that I get the least amount of satisfaction from looking at the giant solid black paintings that are contemporary abstraction.
Yes, it was. We were
although-
years ago.
Although there are some abstractionists that I have liked in the past, like Rauschenberg and Rothenberg and those guys. But you know, I don't really get into the kind of stuff that's actually more of a, I guess you could say a political statement that disregards the actual art, or you know, it's not that I think it should be thrown away, because I mean it's not for me to decide who people should be looking at.
Right.
I'm just saying that I don't really get into it that much.
Yes.
You know, I definitely tend to like things that look like there was a physical, like a skill that was
That was just wasn't
that was
concept.
that there was a craftsmanship to it,
Right.
that there was painting involved
And
in it.
that's
That
just
was
you know your personal opinion.
it's just
right?
my personal
It's a-
thing. You know, I don't get into a lot of contemporary abstract art. But I'm perfectly happy that it's there. I mean, I think
Right.
I think there should be. I think all the art that we don't like, it's just as important that it exists in the world, because it's somebody's favorite, you know. But
Alan is our website is Alan Williams Studio, along with YouTube channel is Alan Williams Studio. These eventually get up on YouTube. I think I got the May 5th one up, so I'm just about a month behind or something. So you can still hear them and go through them and everything. Our Patreon is patreon.com/Alan Williams, and they go up there first. And if you do want something from the website, just email me when you find something you're interested in.
I will say that just for the interest of knowledge, that some of the times the ideas that I have that I most want to work on happen to me when I'm in a project that I hate. Like if I'm doing an illustration for something, or have done, or like I'm doing concept work that isn't working, I'll have all these ideas of personal stuff that I have to do, like I make a note of or make shorthand of, so that I can work on. Because I tend to have I get so many ideas when I'm actually locked into working for somebody else. It's almost like a device I use to I'll like, oh, I took a job I shouldn't have taken. Oh, but look at all these ideas I have now. Yeah.
Good.
But and I've done book covers, which I like doing. Obviously, it's a different kind of mindset than doing work for myself.
Give me a pencil, please.
Which one?
I don't care.
Oh.
Thank you.
But you can't just say, hand me a pencil in here without
I'm
knowing.
sorry. I'm writing down this.
So as you can see, it's really easy for me to get drawn off of one drawing into another one if I let
Sucked
myself.
into another one.
So I do have that thing about that I'm very easily distracted. But I guess one of the reasons why the work that I do works out is because it's one of those things where you can walk away from it and come back, and it doesn't matter where you were working, you can always find another spot to pick it up, and you go, okay, this needs to be done. So there's like a visual map of what needs to be done. So you don't have to ever really worry about getting so distracted that you forget to do something.
Ray asked, did you dabble in many other mediums and styles before finding a niche in pencil work?
Did I you know what's funny is I actually did a lot more oil painting back, I guess in the 90s, in the early 90s. And
At some point you looked, you were like, I don't think I know how to paint. And I was
well,
like, no, there was a bunch of painting.
I did a lot of painting, but the thing was that I read somewhere that that you should think of painting and drawing as very similar or the same thing. It's and I was like, oh, I guess I want to test that out. So I went back to the drawing board and said, literally, I said I want to go back and start drawing again and see if that will help me with painting. And from my perspective, it seems to. I mean, it seems to be very much, the more I draw, the more that painting seems manageable to me.
Right.
Do
you like the art of William Blake?
William Blake. I always have to look things up. I mean, I know the name, but give me a second. Oh yeah. It's very esoteric stuff that obviously has a lot of meaning to him, and I love that. Like Dennis Forkas Kostrimin. If you look up, I think it's.
Now I'm gonna have to write all these down when I post it.
I always start with the name that's easy to spell, Forkas, Forkas, and search it, and then it'll show up. Like if you can see this stuff, like this is one of my more favorite pieces of his, and he's done some album covers for people. He's contemporary. He's actually on Facebook. This was an album cover, I believe, and I love his work a lot, and it definitely has a power to it, which I think the power that I sense in people's personal work is that it has a distinctive meaning to them.
Look up that guy.
Okay.
I know, he's from Poland also.
Sweet.
Another gentleman, Szukal Ski. Oh, and Dore.
This?
I think so.
Stanislav Sapolsky. That's beautiful, actually. So...
Do you like Gustav Dore?
I do. Actually, Gustav Dore is another influence. In fact, early on, when I was in college, I found a giant Italian version of Dante's Inferno that was illustrated by Dore. And apparently, in the midst of saying the book is illustrated by Dore, he actually included a lot of other artists that worked with him, I guess, for those. And it's that level of detail and texture and noise, that pattern of noise that he has and things, that made me love that. Just like I like black and white photography that has patterns of noise in the in the blacks, and like Franklin Booth as well. Mm-hmm. He was sort of a
Booth, yeah.
Women
Wonder said that I read your book, The Witch's Kitchen.
Oh, thank you.
and which is how she found your amazing art and loved it.
Oh.
Did you enjoy writing the book, and do you ever plan on writing another one?
I actually would love to. It's I had a lot of. It was one of the hardest but most fun things I ever had to do. Before I wrote Witch's Kitchen, I had never written anything longer than like a 10-page report for school. And then I proposed that book with a person who was acting as my agent, and she took it and sold it to Little Brown, and I basically provided them like a chapter at a time. But I had a lot of fun with that book, and I actually had a lot. There's a continuation that I want to write.
You know what? I'm sorry. I'm going to just out you. Your writing is fucking awesome, and I always am like poking at him. You need to take just an hour to write, please. Just an hour out of your day to write.
Well, I write bits and pieces of narrative for each one of my for a lot of my drawings.
I know, that's good.
But and I think that's kind of where I sort of cut my teeth in terms of writing. But writing itself is I don't know. I guess I feel about writing the way people feel about drawing when they're first getting into it. It's like really intimidating to sit down and write a book, even though I've done it. I actually wrote. It's a 55,000 word book, and I think I wrote 65,000 words.
Yes.
Once I stopped counting the words, I overwrote.
Right. Yes.
But it was I had a.
They enjoy those stories that you
Oh, thank you.
put with your art.
So yeah, I definitely.
There is a lot.
I have.
There are more writing that he has.
I have like 1-page blurbs that I send to Vicky all the time, and she has a collection of stories that I start, and I say I want to get to this eventually, and then usually I get distracted by doing the art, or it's stuff
or
like that,
coffee
or whatever. But I want to do it because it's so much fun.
And you're good at it.
Oh, thank you. So.
I'm not just saying that.
So I still have actually kind of no idea what this would ever end up being, but I'm okay with that because it's I've worked like nearly to the end of a piece without actually putting that one element into it.
You're putting the face
that
on
resolves
or something?
it. It resolves it.
Yes, you have.
Sometimes it happens at the very end. I don't know. I know right now that it's a shape or something that I'm having fun with. It's sort
that
of
repetition really looks. I like it.
It almost looks like a bony octopus head, Mm-hmm. So, but that's the nature of being able to work for yourself when you can do it. Is that if you can give yourself the freedom to search, to explore,
right?
That's to me the most fun.
No.
But if even that, after a point, you start to go, okay, I can do so many of these explorations, but is there a unifying direction for them? And that starts to happen too at some point, like with the show that I'm doing for Copro.
Yeah, right.
Like a lot of the pieces that I'm working on for that were initially conceived of as personal pieces. It's a personal show,
right?
But it was initially conceived of out of context, and then I realized that I was actually finding
had a
theme.
context. Yes, there was a theme and a context to it, and it was there before you realized it was there.
I guess
I could see it.
Yeah. It's I lost the name for a second. It's Covenant.
Right.
So, which what's funny is I actually got into looking up that the original phrase. I mean, people like to misquote it and say blood is thicker than water, but the actual original phrase is the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb, which means that the relationships that you enter into willfully, the covenant of a relationship, is more powerful than those you were born to sometimes.
Right.
So, and I think a lot of people find that out, that that they end up finding their family,
right,
rather than being born to it.
Right.
Not that family is not important, but I think originally what it meant was any agreement you enter into should be more binding than any agreement you have with your family, and it was probably more of a legal testimony about business than it was spiritual. But it came to mean the opposite of what it actually meant.
Mm-hmm.
But
everybody knows you have to take a nap after these. This is more than he's talked all week, you guys.
Yeah, literally. She's not joking. I typically I'm a pretty quiet person.
Yes.
and at a show I'll talk, but it's like, and show energy is different. Like when I'm at Monsterpalooza or something, I can be up for the entire weekend, and then I come home and sleep for a week.
Right, it's true.
But
Do you have any book recommendations?
book recommendations.
She found The Warded Man because of your painting. It's one
Oh.
of her favorite series.
I like The Warded Man. Let's see, what did I just listen to? I listened to something that I liked. I liked The Bog, which turned out to be a different kind of a book than I thought it was going to be. I listen to a lot of audiobooks.
Yeah.
But let's see.
Oh, I'm tired.
And I've listened. I like, I still like the Dark Tower series as a one of those cross genre things, but I didn't really. I saw that they did an illustrated, like a comic book version of it, which is totally, it was really cool. I just had different imagery in my head, So it's. I'd have to come up with a list. I have a list of books, I think, over there. I think I will do that. I'll come up with a list and we'll
Post
have
them
it
on there.
have it for you guys about books that I just think are fun.
Yes.
I think I still like a lot of Stephen King stuff too because I really like horror. There was a book I read a long time ago that actually scared me when I was young, and it was called Keepsake. I told you about this. It was about the statue in Ireland.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
and
Yes, you did
The
tell
woman
me
found
about
a
it.
stone that
Yes.
was the shape of a head, but what it actually was a demon restrained by St. Patrick.
Oh.
And that was a cool book. Yeah.
So, someone said these sessions the best thing to happen on the Sunday mornings.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. Thanks. Being able to share stuff with people makes it worth the effort of actually talking to people at all. So, no, I mean that. It's like it's like
Yeah, we're chopped chicken liver. No,
No, you're not. It's just,
I know, I'm teasing you.
it's you're not people.
Oh, what? I'm
We're
not
family.
people? Oh,
You're
no.
not people. You're family.
Hey,
But-
Sheila Ryan.
hey, Sheila. Sheila does some beautiful ceramics. If you're ever into it.
Yes.
Uh,
just watched Gerald's game.
Gerald's Game? I haven't. Is it a movie? Or is it a book? I know it's a book, right?
It's watched. It must be a movie.
Okay, cool. And actually like the new version of it. And I'm looking forward to the one where they're adults in the next one.
Oh yeah.
I thought it was a better interpretation of the book than
I can't watch it.
than
It's creepy.
than the one that was that was done in like was it 70s, late 70s, early 80s. But
Sheila Ryan art. She does beautiful. She gave you a heart.
oh, thank
Beautiful
you.
ceramics, pottery.
We own some of her pottery.
Yes. How do you keep workflow balance as an artist?
I'm not sure that I do.
No.
I think I work probably. I tend to default towards work rather than doing other things that are more like social and balanced.
Yeah, sometimes I have to pull him out and say
Yeah.
it's time, and then he'll grumble.
I have been trying to be more social lately though because I read that it keeps you alive longer.
Oh yes.
So-
Yeah, but now you're like, well, I was down there for an hour. Does that give me
I'm
10
trying
more
to come
minutes
up
of
with- I'm
life?
trying
I'm
to-
like,
I'm
that
trying to
doesn't
come
work.
up with a formula.
No, it doesn't work that way.
No?
But you have been more social. Thank you.
Yeah, but in
We
terms
have to
of
go to that thing tomorrow night.
in
remember?
terms of balance, I actually have a really, I guess you could say, a bizarre philosophy. I don't think that you end up doing great things in your own life with balance. I think balance is what you do to achieve a sense of peace, right? Which is cool. But I think most things that you do that you're going to try to do above and beyond what you have done in the past are going to require a degree of obsession.
Like
and-
brain surgery.
Yeah, you definitely need to be. I think it's fine to be obsessed over things that are positive and creative, right?
Right.
That's where obsession. I started to say possession. But
Okay.
that's where
Same
that's
thing,
where
I don't know.
obsession, I think, actually is more beneficial than negative. It can be
To a degree,
I
I
can
mean-
see where being obsessed with.
I will never let him get too far because he can't just stay in the house. I always make him,
So-
eventually make him get out of the house.
So, in answer to your question, I'm not sure that I can answer a question about balance because I don't feel balanced. But I am more balanced again because of Vicky. Like when you were asking earlier,
I know, but he is actually the most balanced person I know.
I'm the least angry person. I'm not sure that's the same thing.
Do you prefer drawing or painting?
Yes.
The-
No, I prefer actually. Drawing is my comfort zone.
Yes.
and painting is a challenge. I prefer, if I really want to do something that I have an idea before I start, drawing, I know I can get there. I'm not sure that I prefer it over painting. It's just that it's honestly safer for me because I know what I'm doing.
That's exactly what I told him one time. I'm like,
Whereas painting, I feel like I'm falling, like on the edge of falling off a cliff all the way to the very end.
Right.
I
don't know if this is going to work. And I'm like, no, that's working.
So.
Yeah, because in my opinion,
I
you
paint
can
faster,
draw.
yeah.
You can draw anything, and you paint faster.
I do paint faster than I draw, which is
Yes.
kind of strange, but.
Do you prefer oils or acrylics?
I prefer oils because of the nature
you
of.
have
I do have
acrylics
acrylics too because I'll use them as underpainting, and I like. And you can. I only prefer oils because of my nature is that I like to fiddle with things, and it gives you enough time to mess it up and bring it back and mess it up and play with it. Whereas acrylics are harder for me to deal with if I have something I want to change.
Yes.
That being said, there are tons of people that can make acrylics sing, like Palancar, who does everything in acrylic. But they have as much depth as any oil painting I've ever seen.
Okay, and it's almost time to go, but someone has asked a question. I don't think this is a question actually to ask Alan. He says, or they say, how to stop myself from going into details too early. Alan is not the person to answer.
You're right, because
Yes,
I do that all the time. I'll start
always
with,
goes into detail too early.
Yeah, but the thing is I've done enough of it. I guess you could say that I trust that I will find it, and I'm very cavalier about erasing. Like I know that
Or painting it out.
or
right?
painting it out. So
Right.
if I make them, but see, a lot of times I'll see a detail that will suggest the entire piece, right? And so
Right.
so I'll follow that one, like, I got lucky and had this little bit of realism here, like where the shadow has a little bit of, I call it like there's when you can box your shadows a little bit, there's a termination line of a shadow, and the shadow glows a little bit with texture, and I'll build everything else off of that, what the light fell on this one detail, because I like this area right here, right?
Right.
So that's the way it works with a lot of the stuff I do.
Do you ever use golden ratio in your artwork, or
Not
Fibonacci?
consciously, but I feel like when I talk about rhythm, that ratio probably plays into it. I don't do a layout with the golden ratio to look at it, but I feel like it's ingrained probably inside me that's part of my.
He doesn't do a lot of layouts.
Yeah. Well, very often I'll start like this,
I know, and then it used to be that you would start and you wouldn't have enough paper, but somehow you've trained yourself not to do that.
Well, and here's another thing. If I like what went on in this and it wasn't laid out properly, I'll just do another one, and I'll start it over and do it again.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So I don't feel like anything's ever lost or wasted. I'll sit and do random pieces that are just abstract bits of texture, and I'll save them and I'll keep them and
Right.
I'll scan them in even.
Yes.
And they might even work themselves into a digital illustration if I'm doing something for somebody else that calls for a digital piece. So I don't feel like any of it's ever wasted, really.
Pradeep says, I see, but I'm too distracted by details and I end up not completing it.
Oh, well,
That's because I'm not behind you yelling at you.
that does have a lot, to do. Well, yeah, that's part of it. I mean, and she does yell sometimes.
I do. Yes,
She's
even
like,
though people
don't believe it, but it's yelling and love.
It's yelling and
Yeah.
yes, yelling with love. Yes.
But it's definitely something that you have to watch out for is getting lost in details. But see, I guess I like doing that. I like getting lost in details and then just following it through. But at some point, they can't all be the same level of detail because that just ends up becoming noise.
Yes, and we got 15 seconds, guys. So find us at AlanWilliamsStudio.com or Patreon.com/Alan Williams, and we will see you next week. Sorry we didn't get to everything.
Yeah, and thanks for showing up.
Thank you for showing up. He can go take a nap now.